He was the strongest man in the room, a wrestling icon, a living legend, but behind the muscle, the roar, and the spotlight, Hulk Hogan was quietly falling apart. Over 25 surgeries, chronic pain, stem cell therapy. And in the end, his heart just gave out. This isn't just a story of fame. It's a story of the body under pressure, the science of pain, and the limits of human resilience. What really happened to Hulk Hogan, and what can we learn from it to protect our own health, healing, and longevity? Let's find out. He was the embodiment of power, charisma, and the American dream in the form of 24-inch pythons. Hulk Hogan, real name Terry Bollea, didn't just change professional wrestling, he redefined it. With his signature mustache, bandana, and booming "What you gonna do, brother?" Hogan became a household name across generations. But beneath the bright lights and roaring crowds was a man quietly enduring unimaginable pain, physically and mentally. For decades, Hulk Hogan's body was a battlefield. The body slams, chair shots, and spine-shaking stunts we cheered for in the ring weren't just scripted drama. They left real, permanent damage. Hogan's professional wrestling career spanned over 40 years, a timeline marked not just by championship belts and roaring fans, but by surgeries, over 25 of them by the end of his life. And yet, through it all, he kept going. Why? What keeps someone pushing their body past its natural limits? Science gives us some clues. Human beings are wired for purpose, and for some, that purpose is so strongly linked to identity that the line between living and performing becomes blurred. For Hogan, being the Hulkster wasn't just a character, it was who he was, and when your identity is wrapped in strength and invincibility, admitting pain feels like defeat. But pain has a voice of its own. Behind closed doors, Hulk Hogan lived in near-constant agony. Multiple back surgeries, knee replacements, hip surgeries, shoulder reconstructions. The man had more metal in his body than a construction site. Yet he smiled, he showed up, he gave the world strength even when his own was fading. In 2025, the world lost Hulk Hogan at the age of 71 to cardiac arrest, a silent, swift end to a loud, roaring life. But while the headlines focused on his death, this channel wants to ask a deeper question. What does Hogan's life teach us about health, longevity, and the limits of the human body? Because this is more than a celebrity obituary. This is a case study, a powerful, real, world example of how pain, identity, mental strength, and modern medicine collide inside one body, and what happens when that body finally breaks down. We'll explore the medical reality behind the surgeries, the science of chronic pain, the brain's role in recovery, and how resilience is both a gift and a burden. Hulk Hogan's story is a warning, but it's also a lesson about what it means to age with dignity, about what it means to accept healing over pushing, and most of all about how to care for the only body you'll ever own. Coming up, how decades of physical punishment led to over 25 major surgeries, and why the human body can only take so much before it starts to say enough. To understand the depth of Hulk Hogan's suffering, we need to look beyond the showmanship and into the science. The human body is built to heal, but only up to a point. When damage becomes chronic, when inflammation becomes permanent, and when the nervous system is constantly on high alert, the body's healing mechanisms begin to falter. They don't just slow down, they begin to break. By the time he passed away at 71, Hulk Hogan had undergone over 25 documented surgeries. His spine alone was operated on at least 10 times. He had artificial knees, reconstructed hips, screws, rods, plates, each one meant to stabilize a body that had become his battlefield. These weren't elective surgeries, they were survival decisions, but survival comes at a cost. Let's break down what happens inside a body under such intense physical stress. Each surgery creates acute trauma. Even with the best surgeons, cutting through muscle, ligaments, and bone triggers a cascade of inflammation. Inflammation in small doses is a good thing. It's your body's first responder. But when it becomes chronic, inflammation does more harm than healing. It destroys healthy tissue, it overactivates pain receptors, and in someone like Hogan, who had injuries layered on top of older injuries, this inflammation never truly resolved. The spine is especially vulnerable. Hulk Hogan had multiple disc replacements and fusions. In a healthy spine, vertebrae are separated by discs that cushion movement. But when those discs degenerate, as they often do under years of trauma, bone begins to grind on bone. Fusions attempt to stabilize that area, but they create new stress points, forcing nearby joints to work harder. That leads to more degeneration and more surgery. It's a domino effect. Now consider the nervous system. Chronic pain rewires the brain. It amplifies pain signals. A simple ache turns into a burning throb. Over time, the brain becomes more sensitive, not less. This is called central sensitization. It's why patients with chronic pain often describe feeling pain in areas that weren't even injured, because the brain's pain map has been redrawn. Add to that the mental toll. Surgeries require not just physical recovery, but emotional resilience. Anesthesia, pain medications, limited mobility, all can contribute to depression, anxiety, and sleep disruption. And yet Hogan kept returning to the spotlight. He kept trying to come back. Why? Because he had to. For some, identity and body are deeply intertwined, and for Hulk Hogan, admitting that his body had limits felt like failure. But here's the truth. Even the strongest bodies age, and even the most powerful machines wear down. Hogan's resilience was admirable, but it wasn't sustainable. So what can we learn from this? We'll explore in the next section how science views chronic pain, not as something to ignore or push through, but as something to understand and heal, starting from within. Pain is the body's warning system. It tells us when we're hurt, where we're hurt, and sometimes how badly. But what happens when that warning system stays on? Permanently, for Hulk Hogan, pain wasn't a moment. It was a state of existence. After decades of slams, surgeries, and forced recoveries, his body became a living archive of trauma. Every joint, every nerve pathway, every scar told a story. But pain, when it becomes chronic, isn't just a symptom. It becomes a disease in its own right. Chronic pain affects over 50 million Americans. It's not just an extension of injury. It's a condition of the nervous system. When you experience pain repeatedly, your body begins to change. Nerves become more sensitive. The spinal cord transmits signals more easily, and the brain rewires itself to prioritize the sensation of pain, even when the original injury has healed. This is what neuroscientists call neuroplasticity gone wrong. Let's take a look at what might have happened in Hogan's brain. The thalamus, which processes sensory input, becomes overactive. The amygdala, responsible for emotional memory, associates movement or certain postures with fear or pain. And the prefrontal cortex, our rational brain, starts to lose its ability to downregulate the whole system. The result, pain, is no longer just physical. It becomes emotional, psychological, and even spiritual. Now add inflammation, which we covered earlier. Inflammation keeps nerve endings irritated. Cytokines, tiny signaling molecules that promote healing, can go rogue and actually worsen pain. It's like your body is trying to help, but ends up hurting you instead. And then there's scar tissue. Every time Hulk Hogan went under the knife, new scar tissue formed. While it's part of the body's natural healing process, Excessive scar tissue can entrap nerves and limit mobility. It becomes yet another trigger for pain, a reminder that healing, when incomplete or repeated too often, can become a trap, but the science of pain also offers hope. Research now shows that the brain's pain map can be redrawn through a process called neuroplastic healing. Techniques like meditation, physical therapy, slow breathing, and gentle movement can all help. They activate the parasympathetic nervous system, your body's rest and repair mode. Over time, this reduces sensitivity, calms inflammation, and helps the brain unlearn the fear of pain. Did Hulk Hogan have access to these methods? Maybe, but he came from a generation that celebrated pushing through, that rewarded silence over softness, and that may have delayed his access to truly restorative care. It's time to change that narrative. In the next section, we'll explore something Hogan was reportedly exploring near the end of his life: regenerative medicine. Can therapies like stem cells or biologics offer true healing where surgery cannot? Let's take a closer look. As Hulk Hogan aged, his injuries didn't just accumulate, they compounded. Traditional surgeries, powerful painkillers, and endless physical therapy became routine. But eventually, even the strongest man begins to wonder, is there another way? Is there something science hasn't fully tapped into yet? For Hogan, the answer seemed to lie in regenerative medicine, a field that's becoming more promising with every passing year. Stem cell therapy became a buzzword in Hogan's later life. He spoke publicly about undergoing stem cell injections overseas in Panama, where experimental procedures are more accessible. These weren't just standard treatments. These were attempts to turn back time, to help his body regenerate tissues that had been ground down by decades of abuse. But what are stem cells, and how do they work? Stem cells are the body's master cells, blank slates capable of becoming bone, muscle, nerve, or cartilage. In a healthy individual, stem cells are responsible for maintaining and repairing tissues. As we age, however, both the quantity and quality of stem cells decline. That's where regenerative medicine comes in. By harvesting stem cells from bone marrow, fat tissue, or umbilical cords, and injecting them into damaged areas, doctors aim to reignite the healing process where it's stalled. In Hogan's case, these therapies were aimed at restoring his spine, hips, and joint, regions devastated by inflammation and mechanical trauma. While the long-term effectiveness of these treatments is still being studied, early research shows promise. Stem cells can reduce inflammation, stimulate local repair, and even modulate immune function. But there's a catch: they're not magic. No therapy can erase 40 years of brutal physical punishment. For Hogan, stem cells may have provided relief, but not reversal. They may have slowed degeneration, but not stopped it. Regeneration is real, but it works best in a supportive environment. That means reducing stress, improving diet, restoring sleep, and calming the nervous system. This is where Dr. Lai's own framework becomes powerful. In his approach to activating the body's 5 defense systems: angiogenesis, regeneration, DNA protection, microbiome support, and immunity, Hogan's story provides a cautionary tale. You can't just rely on one defense system. You need all 5 working in harmony. It's not enough to inject stem cells. You need to feed them, nurture them, support them with the right environment and mindset. Still, Hogan's pursuit of regenerative therapy was a sign of hope, a belief that healing was still possible, that somewhere, buried under the scars and metal plates, his body still remembered what it meant to feel strong, not just on stage, but from the inside out. But even with hope, the body has limits, and in the end, what finally took Hulk Hogan wasn't his spine or his knees, it was his heart. In the next section, we'll explore what really happened in those final moments, and what science tells us about sudden cardiac death in aging bodies under chronic stress. On July 24, 2025, emergency responders were dispatched to Hulk Hogan's home in Clearwater Beach, Florida. The call was for a man in cardiac arrest. Despite immediate care and transport to Morton Plant Hospital, Hulk Hogan, Terry Bollea, was pronounced dead shortly after arrival. There were no signs of foul play. No drugs, no scandal, just silence, just the end. At 71 years old, Hogan's heart simply stopped. But science teaches us that sudden events are rarely truly sudden. Cardiac arrest may appear like a bolt from the blue, but in most cases, it's the final chapter in a much longer story. So, what led to this moment? Let's take a closer look at the biology behind the event. The heart is more than a pump. It's a living, dynamic organ powered by electricity, driven by oxygen, and responsive to everything we do. Years of physical trauma, chronic inflammation, repeated surgeries, stress, and pain can take a heavy toll on the cardiovascular system. For someone like Hogan, who endured long-term pain, likely took decades of prescription medications, and lived with high physical and psychological strain, the heart was under constant pressure. First, there's inflammation. Chronic pain creates chronic inflammation, and inflammation is one of the key drivers of cardiovascular disease. It damages arterial walls, contributes to plaque buildup, and disrupts blood flow. Over time, this increases the risk of atherosclerosis, the narrowing and hardening of the arteries. Then there's stress physiology. Hulk Hogan wasn't just dealing with physical pain, he was dealing with emotional pain. The stress of maintaining an image, managing a legacy, and coping with a declining body takes its toll. Long-term stress activates the sympathetic nervous system, your fight or flight response. It keeps adrenaline and cortisol elevated. These hormones in excess increase blood pressure, strain the heart muscle, and promote arrhythmias, irregular heartbeats that can lead to cardiac arrest. Next, we consider polypharmacy, the use of multiple medications over many years. Painkillers, muscle relaxants, anti-inflammatories, and possibly antidepressants may all have played a role in his care. While each drug may have helped in the short term, the long-term effects on the heart, kidneys, and liver are real. Some medications can prolong the QT interval, measurement in the heart's electrical cycle, and increase the risk of fatal arrhythmias. Finally, we must ask, was his heart ever truly given the chance to rest, not just in the literal sense, but in the holistic whole body sense? Did Hulk Hogan's heart ever get to downshift? Did it ever get the healing nutrients, the calming sleep, the anti-inflammatory lifestyle, the emotional peace it needed? Maybe for a moment, maybe in Panama, maybe in prayer, but maybe not enough. Science cannot predict the moment of death, but it can offer clues about why. Hulk Hogan's heart didn't just stop, it gave everything it had, for years, for fans, for family, until it couldn't anymore. In the final section, we'll reflect on what his story teaches us. Not just about pain or medicine, but about purpose, about longevity, and about how to care for the body before it reaches its limits. Hulk Hogan didn't live a quiet life. He lived loud, proud, and larger than life. But in the silence that followed his passing, we are left with a simple question. What does his journey teach us? Because his story wasn't just about wrestling. It wasn't just about fame or fortune. It was about a body pushed to its limits, about the cost of being superhuman, and about the hidden strength it takes to keep going when everything inside is breaking down. There's something profoundly human in Hogan's final chapter, Beneath the image, beneath the muscle and persona, was a man looking for healing. And in that search through surgeries, stem cells, therapy, and prayer, he represents what so many of us face: the desire to stay strong and the struggle to let go, but science can guide us. It can help us age with less pain, more peace, and more control. From a health perspective, Hogan's life reveals 5 essential lessons. Lesson 1: resilience is not invincibility. The ability to push through pain is admirable, but true strength often comes in rest, recovery, and asking for help. We must learn to honor pain as information, not an enemy. Lesson 2: inflammation is the silent enemy. Whether it starts from injury, stress, poor diet, or lack of sleep, unchecked inflammation erodes the body from the inside. Anti-inflammatory foods, stress reduction, and gentle movement aren't luxuries. They are long-term medicine. Lesson 3: the nervous system holds memory. Chronic pain isn't just in the joints or spine, it's also in the brain's wiring. Healing requires retraining the brain. This means incorporating practices like mindfulness, breathing exercises, sleep therapy, and somatic awareness. Lesson 4: regeneration needs support. Stem cells and modern medicine are powerful tools, but they are not magic. To regenerate, the body needs nutrients, rest, oxygen, movement, and emotional safety. Think of the body like soil. You can plant the seeds of healing, but only fertile ground will let them grow. Lesson 5: longevity is not just about time, it's about the quality of time. A strong heart isn't just one that beats longer, it's one that beats with peace. Aging well is about maintaining function, protecting joy, and embracing transitions. Hulk Hogan may be gone, but his story is not. It echoes in the gym rats who push through torn ligaments, in the older adults quietly living in pain, in the celebrities and everyday people seeking healing wherever they can find it. As a health-conscious community, as a generation learning from those who came before us, we owe it to ourselves to listen to stories like his, to pause, to reflect, and to ask the most important question: are we healing, or just surviving? In memory of Hulk Hogan, a warrior in the ring, a survivor in life, and now a teacher in rest. If you want to learn how to build a body that defends, heals, and regenerates, stay with us. Because your health journey is just beginning. In the end, Hulk Hogan gave everything: his strength, his energy, his body, to entertain the world, but his story is more than legacy. It's a reminder that even legends have limits, that no amount of willpower can outrun biology. But here's the good news: we don't have to wait until our bodies break down to start healing. We can eat to repair, move to protect, rest to restore, learn to listen before it's too late. Hogan's story ends with silence, but yours doesn't have to. Take what you've learned, build a life that heals, and remember, real strength starts from within.